IRAs and Roth IRAs. How do you decide which one is right for you? Forget about the investments. Now we're just talking about tax code. Which one is right for you, and when do you make a change? Join us on Consider This Program today. We'll break it down for you. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
I'm Grant Soliven.
We are happy to have you along. And Grant, you too.
Oh, thank you.
It's always fun to have you around.
Love being here.
It's I don't know. It's kind of like a full circle thing. The circle of life. I feel like I'm in the middle of the Lion King or something, But Grant showed up in one of my classes at Purdue, and I spent a stint for 7 years as an adjunct professor at Purdue teaching financial planning, the senior course. And Grant was one of those, and he walked in and had no idea what was going to happen to his world. And now he's been with us for a little over 5 years. And is it 5 years yet? It's close. It's close to 5 years.
Close.
And we're happy to have you along. He's the manager of the planning operations division. And just plumb tickled to have him along and have him on the show. Happy to have you along as well. It takes a lot to spend time learning about your finances, your money, what's going on. It's a whole lot easier to bury your head in the sand and then get ran over by the truck at the end of the day. And so I commend you for taking the time to listen to this, and hopefully we can give you some meaningful stuff that will make a difference for you. This whole theme of this show is tax planning as opposed to tax reporting. Remember, planning is what you do before December 31st. Reporting is what you do when you cry and hand the CPA your numbers. Maybe cry when you get it back and find out that you owe money, or how much you actually paid in that you shouldn't have paid in or didn't have to pay in if you'd have done better reporting. Grant's going to break this down for you. And in this segment, we're going to talk about IRAs versus Roth IRAs, what they are, what's the difference, and who should use which. So, Grant, over to you.
100%. In the last segment, we talked about the 401k and 403b world. And now we're talking about the IRA world. And they are two different worlds. The Department of Labor runs the 401k space, and the IRS runs the IRA space. IRA stands for Individual Retirement Arrangement. Most people think it's account, but it's arrangement. And when you have money in a retirement account, it's yours. It's not your spouse's IRA, it's your IRA. Now, if you predecease your spouse, then it becomes theirs. But it's an IRA.
If they're the beneficiary.
That's true. That's a great point, Joe. Good point, good catch. If they're the beneficiary. So always make sure you're checking your beneficiaries. My wife's listening, and she probably is going to go look at ours right now since I missed that. So just to confirm. But when you're looking at IRAs, right, most individuals have money in an IRA, not a Roth, but an IRA. And the reason is they weren't just Joe looking at stacking money in a tax-deferred account. What they had done when they have IRAs is when they left their employer, or maybe multiple employers over time, they rolled all that tax-deferred money into an IRA. So when non-Roth money, deferred money, comes from a institution like a 401k or even another IRA, like a simple IRA or SEP IRA, and it moves to a deferred IRA that's known as a trustee-to-trustee transfer. You pay zero taxes, right, on that event. And like most people, they want to keep their head in the sand and kick that can down the road. And so these IRAs become massive buckets. Now, when is it appropriate to open a Roth IRA? Well, Joe, that comes down to a couple different kind of scenarios. Number one, if you had a Roth option in your 401k, you've likely already started that process. But we always tell individuals, if you have a Roth 401k, you still probably want to start contributing, if eligible, to a Roth IRA, because there's a thing known as a 5-year clock. Now, there's multiple 5-year clocks. The one we'll focus on is the contribution 5-year clock, meaning, and here's the key, the minute you make contributions, you start a timeline that allows you access to the growth once you reach 59.5.
So this is where we go back to the importance of it being an arrangement as opposed to an account. And remember, with the Roth, there are 2 C's. So do not get confused. There are conversions. That's when you take IRA money and move it to Roth money. And contributions. That's when you're taking money that you've earned and you're eligible to make a contribution into the Roth. So what Grant's talking about is the contribution. So what I told Grant when he was at Purdue, what I would tell you, what I would tell your grandkids or your kids that are listening, you have to have earned income. That means you had to have sweat, right? So it can't be money that you gift them. has to be earned income, but I told him to go to PFQ, Purdue Federal Credit Union, and open up a Roth IRA and put $100 in it and then close the account. Now, PFQ probably wasn't happy with me for that, but the reality was that started the 5-year clock. That's why individual retirement arrangement mattered so much. It didn't have to be a Roth IRA that he and Kim have now. It was a Roth IRA that he started way back, 15 years ago at Purdue University, and that 5-year clock had already started. So understand there are 2 tax codes, one for the informed, one for the uninformed. Darn it, we want you informed.
100%. And Joe's correct. Not only did I walk into a bank and set up a Roth IRA right after that class, it wasn't a PFQ, unfortunately, Joe, but I did open one for
Well, that's okay.
$50, wasn't 100. Had to pay rent. But he's 100% correct. You have to have that earned income. But more importantly, in a Roth IRA, your growth in that account grows income tax free for the foreseeable future. I used to use the word forever, and then Joe kindly reminded me that Congress can change their mind. So for the foreseeable future, that money grows income tax free. And oftentimes Joe and I, when we're talking about Roth contributions, Roth conversions, 401ks and the Roth, etc., we get asked, is that risky? Is a Roth risky? Remember, when we're talking about IRAs or 401ks, we're simply talking about tax code. Just tax code. They're not risky. What you put in them is, but your contributions are not. Now, another caveat. So, Joe, some people, they look at us and say, Joe, Grant, I can't open a Roth IRA. I make too much money. I've been very blessed to have an adjusted gross income that limits me from putting money in my plan. I can't do it. Sorry, 5-year clock. Sorry about you. Well, there's this cute little thing in the tax code called a backdoor.
No. That's not in the tax code. That's a Joeism. Be careful.
Which one? The cute thing?
The backdoor is not in the tax code. You need to be aware of that.
Fair enough. So here's the Joeism. The backdoor Roth IRA. Now, here's what's important to understand about this. It is a hole in the tax code that many individuals are allowed to deploy. But here's the thing. If you're going to do this, you will not want to have IRA money. I'll say it again. You do not want to have IRA money. And Joe, because it's this thing called the pro rata rule, and it gets ugly. So for many of our families that have IRA money and they're looking to do this backdoor strategy, there are things that we need to discuss and how to help your plan so that you can put these $12,000 or $14,000 away if you're married, $6,000 per person versus $7,000 if you're over 50. In your plan, we want to make sure that we do this correctly, because if the pro rata rule kicks in, you're in trouble.
Well, you're not in trouble. You just have to recognize that it's not as simple as it was before. So let's pretend here for a second.
Okay.
All right. So when you do a conversion, the IRS aggregates all of your IRAs together.
Yes.
So let's say you have $100,000 in an IRA. Mm-hmm. No, let's say you have $94,000 in an IRA, and you make a $6,000 contribution to a Roth IRA, and the IRS says, sorry, your income was too late. Great, right? So now you're back to the $100,000 IRA. Mm-hmm. You do a $6,000 conversion, mm-hmm. right, of Roth money that you were able to put in the year before. And what the IRS is going to say is, okay, 6% of the conversion was Roth money and is tax-free, right? Mm-hmm. 94% of it, on the other hand, is taxable. Not a penalty. You can still convert without a penalty.
Yes.
But based on the pro rata rule, you're going to pay taxes on that 94% of the money that's in there, which leads to a couple complications. One, you're paying taxes on money you may have not understood you're paying taxes on.
Right.
And two, you have to keep track of the basis. That falls on the requirement of the taxpayer to be able to do that. And it leads to some confusion for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so this is one of the things that I will tell you before I turn it back over to Grant is try not to self-medicate. I've been saying that for years and years and years on this show. This is my 23rd or 24th year to do the radio show. Be careful when you self-medicate. I'm trying to give you good ideas and good thoughts, but you really still do need somebody who can look at your whole situation and understand what's going on, as opposed to trying to take bits and pieces and apply them together. The pro rata rule is real. It is painful if you don't use it correctly. You want to take the concepts that we're talking about and consider, if you will, how they apply to you.
And I want to address the second C, Joe, in that Roth, which is a conversion. So why would someone want to have a Roth IRA from a conversion perspective? And this comes back to shows we've talked about in the past where we're playing chess with the IRS. At the time of this recording...
Just sounds good, doesn't it?
It does, right? I tried to say backgammon once. It didn't flow as nicely. But we're playing chess with the IRS right now. And the tax code at the time of this recording likely is not going to get any cheaper than it is today. And so for a lot of families, especially if we're watching the effective tax rate and bracket bumping and making sure we're filling up the tax bracket you're stuck in, the marginal tax rate you're stuck in, right? 12% married filing jointly, 22, whichever it is. We know that the tax code's going to increase. And so why wouldn't we hand as many dollars logically to the IRS today to discount instead of waiting for that tax code to go up? And then worse, when you reach the magical age of 72, required minimum distributions kick in, effectively making you add more money to your return over time. So might as well just get this in their hands early, pay the lower potential tax for your future. And so Roth conversion does make quite a bit of sense for many of our families.
It's probability scenario planning. We can't tell you that the tax rate's going to go up. I can tell you, looking at it, I believe the probability is that it will rise. I can't tell you what the stock market's going to do tomorrow, next week, or next month, or even next year. I can just tell you the probability is over time the market will continue to go up. So we make investments based on probabilities, and we have to do tax planning based on probabilities. What I want to have is that ability, that diversity to be able to make choices regardless of what the IRS does. If they want to move their bishop, their king, their queen, their pawn, if they want to move it in a different direction, I want you to have the ability to make a corresponding move that kind of outsmarts them. And folks, you do not have to be a genius to do this. You're playing against other people who are not paying attention, right? But we can't take care of everybody. We can't take care of everybody. But if you call and get signed up for a Next Steps meeting, we'll see if we can take care of you. 800-928-4001, yourlifeafterwork.com.